For an accountant, January is a deadline. And let's just say some clients only remember the deadline in January as well.
On the 31st?
On the 31st,
Have you filed all your tax returns?
I'm nearly there.
You're nearly there. So you've
There's
got
a few more left.
50 to go then.
50. Oh.
You're going to be burning the midnight oil. The purpose of the Empower Hour show is to inspire, motivate and empower you to do bigger and better things in your life and in your business. And we do that by inviting world-leading authorities from across the globe who share their experience and expertise with you. And tonight we have a very special guest, Mark Homer, who is a property investor. In fact, he's a guru of property investors. He's also a trainer, speaker, a double or a treble world record holder, which I'm sure he'll share with us. And he has a fantastic business mind. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Shaz. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us on this wonderful evening. How are you tonight?
I'm great. I've had a longish day dealing with tax returns as well. Loads of our sort of LLPs and personal stuff. The deadline is tomorrow, so I'm trying not to get a fine.
So you're one of those guys that Hasib was talking about.
That we love.
Yeah, I've had a few of those emails. Yeah, in the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
Before we talk about business, I'm intrigued about this world record you hold. Tell us more about that.
So at Progressive, we have done a series of world record events, and what we decided to do was raise money for Sue Ryder at Thorpe Hall. So we did the longest speech, sort of ever in the world. It became a world record, and yeah, there were a few of us that did it. There were 4 or 5 of us, yeah, we got Guinness out, and they came and authenticated it, and then we went in the Guinness World Records book.
Fantastic.
And how many of those have you done?
Do you know what? I think we've done. Every year we do a new sort of big event, and in terms of Guinness ones, we've done 3, but we've been doing events like that now for 11 years. Different charities. We started off with cancer research. Sue Ryder, on average, I think we've raised 120,000 for them.
Wow, brilliant.
Each time. Yeah, my business partner got the sort of longest individual world speech or world record speech. Yeah, we've been doing them for a while.
I bet he can do that in his sleep, can't he?
He's been talking for a while. He's got some experience at this. Yes, we've. I think we do something like 600 or 700 training days every year, and he'd still have his hand in doing a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you love property. Share with us how you got into the property sector.
Well, I went to school and I had a group of friends who were buying property, and their fathers had been doing it for years and years. They weren't really round here, but I went to school in Rutland. But then I moved to Peterborough when I was 13. My mum.
And you've never looked back since, have you?
Well, that was it. We moved into a little house in Bretton when I was 13, I think I got to sort of 16, 17, realised all these guys were making really good money and they were elsewhere. Kept looking around, looked in Hampton, looked at various things, and I bought a little new build in Hampton, an off-plan property. Made a little bit of money out of that. But what really seemed to work for me was small terraces that I could buy, refurbish, and then remortgage to pull the money out. And I went all the way around Alton Goldhay, bought quite a lot round town. Westwood, Ravensthorpe, Bretton, and just kept buying these little units that I could refurbish and put tenants in, and then sort of grew it from there into renting rooms, and then onto commercial buildings where we'd convert them and then put them into flats mainly.
So there's probably a lot of people out there listening to this show who, like me, think property is perhaps quite boring. You buy a property, you rent it out, you wait for the capital appreciation, and in 10 or 15 years time the property appreciates by 10 or 15%, and that's where they make their money. Is that how it usually works, or are there some different strategies people can implement?
Well, I think it's really important for people to focus first and foremost on income. and yield. So I think that's where it starts. So, generally speaking, and this is very Peterborough specific, often I'm talking to people who are in other parts of the country, or I'm in London and I'm trying to explain this and it doesn't really work in that area, but it really does work here. Because the purchase prices are low enough, you can get a good yield. And what I mean by yield is the annual rent divided by the purchase price of the property. And I think you really want to be looking for something at 6.5–7% plus. Now, if you can find little houses or flats at that sort of rental yield, you should be able to buy it, put the deposit in, refurbish it, and get a good chunk of your money back by remortgaging it, therefore having that money to go on and buy more and more. And what that'll provide for you is a rental stream, so it will give you income on, it might be a relatively small amount of money left in each property. And this is the strategy which we followed, I don't know, more 11, 12 years, something like that we've been doing it for. And it's changed and it's twisted and turned. Obviously through the credit crunch it changed a lot. So that's what looks after the day-to-day. That's what keeps you safe. Income keeps the wolves from the door. It stops the banks repossessing. But you usually end up making most of your money from capital growth and the property price going up over time. But the thing with that is you never know when it's going to happen and you never know how much capital growth you're going to get. Whereas with the income, it's very predictable. You know what it's going to be before you buy. So focus on the income. Only buy stuff with very high sort of income percentage or high yield. And the capital growth, honestly, it will just look after itself. Lots of people say, if I buy, in a really good area, then it's going to have better capital growth. I don't know, maybe you buy, what's the most expensive street in Peterborough? Maybe, I don't know, Westwood Park Road or somewhere like that. Yes, at certain points in the cycle, you may get higher capital growth, but I bet you over a 20-year period, you'll probably get the same capital growth on Cromwell Road that you will on Thorpe Road. Actually, in percentage terms, it isn't really that different. They often, unless the area changes a lot, they tend to remain relative to each other relatively the same. That's something that people often miss.
Cromwell Road is the best road in Peterborough, just in case you weren't aware, because I was born here. So we've got a person who buys a property, rents it out as a single let, saves up some more money, has a deposit to buy a second property.
Yeah.
Should they then look at single let, or are there any other particular strategies which they could think about?
Yeah, so there's a whole load of different strategies, and as time has gone on and technology has matured, there are more things that you can do. So the sort of next stage on might be renting rooms out, and it's a good thing to create rooms with a really nice specification, because generally speaking, I find that you can really push the rent up and get a much better rental yield with a high spec sort of roomlet, or maybe a cluster flat you might call it. And if you give them en suites and you make them really, really nice inside in terms of the interior design, that can be really good. So you might have a sort of low end room for 300. But if you do a really nice spec, you might get 450. You might even get 500, especially in the town centre. Whereas with a sort of low end single let, I don't know, a 3-bed, maybe you get 600, but if you did an amazing one, you might only get 650. So it doesn't necessarily pay you to do such a high spec. It's just a slightly different market. Moving on from that, you might do serviced accommodation. So that is taking a flat or a house and basically turning it into nightly rentals. So if you've got if you think of a hotel room, basically you're offering a house or a flat on similar terms to a hotel room, and you'd advertise it through Airbnb or maybe booking.com. Lots of people do that. Clearly there's a lot more management involved. You've got to do cleaning, you've got to make sure the linen is changed, and you've got to deal with sort of guests coming and going and all the bookings. But lots of people do that. They turn it into a business. There's people making a couple of grand a month on a flat. Wow. It can be very, very profitable if you buy the right units in the right areas and then get a good score on on Airbnb and Booking.com, so you get lots of repeat business. Again, internal spec. It's worth making them really, really nice with those kind of units.
So that's really interesting. What's really hot in property right now? Is it service accommodation or is it something else?
Yeah, I think serviced accommodation is certainly the flavour of the moment, and it has been, I'd say, for the last couple of years. A lot of that is because of Airbnb and what's happened with the internet and the how the technology has really moved on. I think a lot of the hotels haven't adapted like they could do. Certainly in the city centre sort of Airbnb units that we've got, lots of people will choose to take a one-bed flat for £80 a night instead of, I don't know, maybe a room in a hotel that's not far away for 80, 85, £90 a night, because they're getting more space. Some people prefer the hotel room, but lots of people appreciate the extra space and like the sort of comforts that a flat might bring. So that's quite a big market now, and something that's growing. That's probably the biggest area of growth in this sector. The other big thing with serviced accommodation is you can offset all of the mortgage interest against the rent, whereas with a single let or a room let, a HMO, the government changed the rules, so you're not allowed to offset all of the mortgage interest against the rent, so you end up paying more tax if you own the property personally. So there's another little benefit with a serviced accommodation unit.
I'm sure you've come across this before, because clients and contacts ask this question to me very regularly. Is I'm interested in property, I don't have the knowledge, the experience, the expertise, I don't even have the money, so that kind of becomes their barrier to entry. Do you have any ideas or suggestion of what people can do if those things are hurdles in their own mind?
Well, there were hurdles in my mind when I started because I didn't have much money. I lived at home with my mum, and I think I had 15 to 20 properties before I even moved out of the family home. So that was my priority. I had a real big desire to sort of get into this. So it's probably about going around and doing joint ventures. For me, I went and I borrowed money. I borrowed money off parents. You might have friends. You might have other people that want to invest, and people that aren't getting a good return in the bank. Interest rates are still very low. There aren't many high yielding investments out there. Property is one of the sort of big last things that people can do to get a good income stream on their money. So there are lots of people out there with cash in the bank. They don't necessarily know how or what to do, and they don't have the time to do it. And of course, if you're somebody who will put the work in, can sort of learn what to do, and critically, this is the most important thing, they trust you. You build that trust over a period of time. You can probably start with one, show them that you can make it work, then they'll probably feed the money in increasing vigour later on. I think that's often the best way to start. You could start with loans as well. There's mortgaging is easier now, a lot easier, probably the easiest it's been for about 10 years. The banks are lending again, but generally speaking, you're going to need to find a deposit from somewhere.
Fantastic. If you've just joined us, welcome. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. This is the Empower Hour show. I'm delighted to have Mark Homer with us, who is a property guru, a speaker, trainer, world record holder, and an author. Mark, when you started your business, what were some of the key challenges you faced?
So clearly the key challenge was one we just touched upon, which was access to capital and raising the money to go out and employ people, and giving confidence to investors. And that grows, and you sort of learn that with time. As long as you do a good job, you've got to be very, very sort of tight on the costs when you start, and reinvest that money back into the business. Make sure don't do a Carillion and sort of be paying all the shareholders like yourself for all the money out sort of early doors. So that was a big thing. One of the biggest hurdles, and I had a sort of helping hand with this, is marketing. and marketing is one of the most important parts, of business, and it's probably the area you probably need to focus on the most in the early days. Now, I've never been a very good marketeer. In fact, I'm pretty rubbish when it comes to that. And I realised when I met my business partner, my now business partner, who also at the time wasn't a marketing expert, I realised, that I needed somebody like him. He was very interested in it. He had a burning desire, which is really important. He had a burning desire to learn more about it, and he just went and read like 20 books on the subject and became very, very skilled at marketing. So I think that was one of the sort of biggest challenges or biggest things that I knew that I had to fix in the early days. Lots of people start businesses and spend a load of money on, I don't know, IT systems and phone systems and buying stuff for the office, furniture. You can spend 15 grand on all these desks. For me, this is all just nonsense. When you start, we started in Rob's living room at home. We were there for a year. We used sort of second-hand computers. We got my mum in as the PA, and we sort of built the business up from there. We bought, a lot of furniture from a liquidation of a business that happened locally. We got the furniture and the computers and, loads of sort of records out of there that we needed. And that was sort of how we organically grew things over a period of time. I still believe in all that, and it puts a shudder down my spine when we, sort of have these, these big whiz-bang computer, well, at the moment it's printer contracts, 15, 20 grand, and, we're just paying a load of money to a GDPR expert, which is, important, and these are regulations which are coming, and you've got to deal with this stuff. God, you've got to focus on the commercial stuff first in the early days. Yeah.
If you have any questions, you can email the studio on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text and WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978, or as per usual, you can send us a question on Facebook Live, and I'll happily ask Mark those questions. And I've got plenty of questions here for you, Mark, but I know Hasib is raring to go, so I'll pass it over to him.
Thank you, Shaz.
Questions.
I have many questions on that. The first question I've got to ask yourself, Mark, is some listeners might be aware, might not be aware. What are the pros and cons of buying a house at an auction? Is it the same that you get a cheaper, like a car auction, you get a better deal? And what are the pros there and the cons for buying a house at an auction, and also the capital, how to raise the capital?
So auction is buying at auction is either very good or pretty bad, often dependent on where you are in the market. So when the market's really, really buoyant, I tend to find at auctions lots of stuff is going above market value. Lots of people assume, as with a repossession, that everything at auction is cheap. The same thing with repossession. So, when the market is very much, sort of moving and active, often auction properties can be more expensive. Conversely, I remember in the credit crunch, the stuff that went to the auction usually had to sell because it might be a repossession, but often it would be a big sort of, a local authority selling, or maybe a trustee in bankruptcy or something like that, and they've put it into the auction specifically because they want to prove that they're getting market value. So they're introducing, that they're allowing everyone to bid on it, so they've met their regulatory requirements. But what it meant was, a lot of the stuff that was with the estate agents, where people just wouldn't take an offer of what the property was really worth, the stuff at the auction had to sell for 30%, and if it was 30% cheaper, because that's where the market was at the time, then so be it, it went through. So I think in a bad market, auctions can be brilliant. In a good market, often, they can get pretty bubbly. Generally speaking, you've got to put 10% down. And that goes down on the day, so exchange on the day, and you've usually got to complete within 28 days. Now, there are lots of bridging companies that will say, oh, we'll get you the money within 28 days, and some will. Often they don't. and they can be very expensive. So I think it's important when you're at auction to have a backup. It's very hard to get a mortgage in reality in 28 days, no matter what a mortgage broker tells you. I've managed it a couple of times, but it's very stressful. Yeah. So, you know, auction can be good for all that stuff. Other things about auction, you get the legal pack online, so you can actually look at what it is you're bidding on or about to sort of view. You can look at all the legals before you even go out to it and get a solicitor to check into that. So that can save you quite a lot of time, because often with an estate agent you agree the deal, but then you find out, you know, all the legal sort of stuff, and you know, any covenants that are on the property, or you know, any other sort of issues that are there come out later. A nice little tip, and this was one in your constituency, over in Fletton, Chaz. This was a property which was on with this was an auction, and it was a receiver that was managing a bankruptcy. And it said on the outside of the house, no viewings, or it said in the auction catalogue, no viewings. So, of course, people looked at this property and they thought to themselves, I assume, I'm going to have to bid, I don't know, 30-40% less because I can't look inside it. And it put lots of people off. They had to assume that it was fire damaged or whatever. So I just went around the property. I knocked on the door, and a lady answered, and I explained that I was interested in buying it, and I'd be interested in renting it to her as long as she paid the rent. And I asked her if she wanted a viewing fee, and she agreed. I paid her £10, and I looked around the property, and got all the information, and worked out the condition of the property, and realised that actually there was nothing wrong with it. It just needed a bit of light refurb. So got on the phone. Didn't go to the auction because there's little point. I don't usually think there's any point travelling all the way to the auction. I got online, filled all the forms out, sent my ID and everything like that, bid, and ended up getting about 20% less because there were that many less people looking at it. A great way to find auction properties coming up in your area is Essential Information. It's a website. It's run by David Sanderman. It's called Essential Information. If you go on that website, you can put your search terms in, and it will email you every week where the properties are that are any properties that are coming up in your area get emailed to you from Essential Information, no matter what auction they're at all around the country. So lots of people will just look at certain auctions, and if they're outside of their area, they won't see a property that is in their area in the auction. Essential Information grabs all the information from all the auctions on a search term that you're looking for, i.e. Peterborough residential properties, and then it puts it in your email box. I still use it now today. You can have residential or commercial. That's, I think, the best way to find them. Then go around and view them. Pay a solicitor £200, 300 quid, just have a look at the legal pack, and then just bid on the phone. I don't normally bother turning up. I mean, you can go and you can sort of look at people and look at their eyes and all the rest of it, but yeah, I haven't really got much out of that myself.
Another thing is what I see on TV shows that people are looking at investing in property is they invest in a property, the budget, they expect to spend X amount. They always go over budget, and always finding the right people for the right jobs is finding it difficult. What's the way around that?
Well, I think that's a continuous issue, and I've just completed a sort of big refurb and conversion of a commercial building at the back into my own home, and we've gone over budget quite a lot because we found a lot of things like a well under the house, and woodworm in, we had to change floors and all sorts of stuff like that, and all that sort of stuff does pop up. But I think the key to this is if you stick to an area, and if you're in Peterborough, you kind of say to yourself, that's my investment area, or, we also buy in Corby, and we've got some in Wellingborough as well. But we tend to stick to those areas, so we're using the same men over and over again. And generally speaking, if you get a relationship running with a few refurb guys, you have to kiss some frogs initially, so you end up using a few who like you say, probably go round and don't quote properly, or end up with a much bigger bill, or end up doing it very late. That's an issue at the moment because they're all so busy. But over a period of time, you get to find the good ones through trial and error, and then those good ones you can just keep rolling with. I tell you the best place to find them, the best place I've always found them, letting agents, because letting agents have maintenance men constantly working on properties. Thank
you very much, Mark. You can share the last bit of advice just after the break. Listeners, we're about to go to a break, and please do join us in about 4 minutes time. Thank you.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Urse Mubarak of Khwajgan Neriyan Sharif Sheikhul Alam Pir Alauddin Siddiqui Rahmatullah alayh, under the supervision of Hazrat Allama Pir Dr. Sultan Al-Arifin Siddiqui Sahab Sajada Nashin Darbare Aliya Neriyan Sharif, taking place on Saturday 3rd February at Jamia Masjid Gamkhol Sharif, Birmingham. 2 coaches will leave Peterborough at 10:30 a.m, one for men and one for ladies, and it is free of charge. For more information on the event or transport, please contact Faisal Hussain on 07811117786. Sisters can contact this number 07424403527. That's Urse Mubarak of Khwajgan Neriyan Sharif Sheikhul Alam Pir Alauddin Siddiqui Rahmatullah alayh, taking place on Saturday 3rd of February at Jamia Masjid Gamkhol Sharif. A great spiritual gathering. Everyone is welcome.
Sadly, millions of orphans living in the poorest countries lack the necessary support for a healthy childhood. These children have to endure lives of hardship without the basic necessities that would help them to grow, to learn, to live. Let's show them that we do care. Let's brighten up their future. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
Are you looking for a fun-loving and professional nursery? Then call Bright Bambini Montessori on Peterborough 306565. Teaching EYFS curriculum and Ofsted approved. We also offer Forest School and Arabic. Limited free funded places available. Call 01733 306565 or email info@bbmc.uk. Bright Bambini Montessori.
Need a great place to chill out? Look no further than The Lounge for quality food and drinks at a great price. Try our varied menu: pasta, seafood, burgers, grills, salad, soup, rice and sides. Also hot and cold drinks, milkshakes and mocktails. Leave room for our exquisite desserts. The Lounge, 417 Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge, friendly service with a great atmosphere.
Need car parts quickly and at a great price? City Auto Parts offer competitive prices, trade accounts and a delivery service in and around Peterborough. For all your parts and accessories requirements, visit City Auto Parts, 30 Fitzwilliam Street, Peterborough, PE1 2RX. Call us on 01733 347711 or visit www.cityautoparts.co.uk.
Allah's Apostle sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah has 99 names, 100 less one, and he who memorized them all by heart will enter paradise. To count something means to know it by heart.
I sometimes lie awake at night and wonder.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us again. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. I'm Shaz Nawaz, your host, and I have in the studio with me Hasib, my co-host. You're listening to the Empower Hour show. The purpose of our show is to inspire, motivate and empower you to do bigger and better things in your life and in your business. We do that by inviting world-leading authorities who share their knowledge, experience and expertise. As always, please do get involved in the show. You can do that by emailing the studio on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text or WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook Live. I'm delighted to have Mark Homer with us tonight. He is a serious and a serial property investor. He's a trainer, a coach, an author, a world record holder, and he also is a specialist in helping people how to save money. And I know that is his favourite topic. Welcome again, Mark.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me on, Shaz. It's a lot of fun.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And doesn't time fly? We're already halfway through. Somebody's sent in a question, Mark, and I think that they've either been on your website or read one of your books. They've established you've done some work with Alan Sugar and James Caan. And the question is, what did you learn by spending time with Alan Sugar and or James Caan?
Well, when James Caan came and spoke at one of our big events, we used to run something called a property super conference, and we did a series of these. We did one at Wembley Stadium, we did one at Chelsea Football Club, and we'd get 700, 800, 900, 1,000 people to each one of these events. With the year sort of James Caan came along and spoke at our event, we did some sort of mentoring with him afterwards, and it was quite interesting because we were sitting in his office, and he pressed a button and he just said, "Watch this," and one of his sort of staff members came on the end of the line, and he said, "Can you bring your your weekly task list in?" So she came in, she brought this list in, and it said exactly what she was supposed to be doing that week. And at the bottom there was a signature and a date on it. So every week, every staff member had a list of what they had to do that week, and then at the end of the week they had to sign at the bottom to say they'd done it, which we found quite interesting. And the second thing he showed us was these systems documents, which you got every single staff member to do, which they had to write themselves, which explained what their job role was, what they were doing during the week, what all their specific tasks were. A, to sort of prove they were doing it. B, to get clarity. But C and D, to make sure that if they were ill or they left, that the next person would be able to take over that role. So it was systemised, and it was putting the sort of value and the strength into the business rather than the individuals working in it. So that was a sort of key learning for us, and we went away, we came back, and we got lots of the staff to fill out systems documents.
I bet they were pleased.
Well, do you know what? We did, I was just going to come on to that. We had a couple of issues after that, and two people left, actually. Immediately following that, but it highlighted quite a few issues within our business. So there was a lot of value to that. With Alan Sugar, I mean, he was quite direct when he came on our event. We've got a couple of we've got a lot of people who sort of follow us and have, I don't know, probably for a decade. There were a few of them sort of asked a few questions, and there was one lady who she was a surveyor, and she asked about sort of rental units in the north of England, and she asked what the government was going to do in the recession to sort of help them, and he absolutely blasted her and sort of said, "What do you expect the government to do? They don't know what to do themselves," you know, and so it was very, very direct. We had a chat about commercial property afterwards, because he's invested quite a lot in sort of very high-end stuff. So he's got shops on, you know, Bond Street. Yeah. So I was there last weekend, and he'd have bought stuff with 2% yield, which is, you know, for someone like him, he probably likes it, A, because it's secure, in his mind, and will let easily. But there's a lot of trophy value. They're like walking up and down, sort of looking at it's prestigious, walking up and down, looking at their building, telling their mates about it, and of course there are a lot of foreign investors. From the Middle East and China and different places around the world that like buying that stuff too. So he was into that. He was doing quite a few developments as well. His son manages that side of the business. And over the years, they've had sort of, quite a few office buildings and different developments that have come out of that. A lot of commercial stuff with Amprop. So, he got a lot of experience himself. So James Khan at that time, he just bought his office because we were right at the bottom, and I think it's got to have tripled since. And that would have been probably 2010, 11 that time. So both sort of quite big property guys, done quite a lot in that sphere.
Good. Another question we have for you is it better to invest in commercial or residential?
Yeah, well, that's the age-old question. I mean, I'm biased. I started with little houses. I started buying and refurbing, and back in the old days we could buy no money down and we didn't put a deposit in, and that's where I cut my teeth. And residential's always looked after me because I know I can always find a tenant. Commercial, we have bought commercial buildings. We've got quite a big building at the moment. You may remember the Marks and Spencers on Bridge Street. So I bought that last April, and that's got a supermarket on the ground floor. So it's got a B&M supermarket in there, and they're trading there on a long lease. So that's quite secure, and that clearly that offers a good income stream. But big buildings like that, when they become empty, they can become empty for years, and you can get empty property rates, which is a bit like council tax for commercial buildings, which can really push the value of them down. So of course, it depends what you're getting and at what price. So those big commercial buildings, they can be great if you've got a tenant and you're buying them at the right price, and they can be less hassle. Often though, I think residential, you can borrow more as a percentage of the purchase price. It's easier to find a tenant, and honestly, I think it's lower risk generally. The population in this country is still increasing in a significant way. They're still not building enough houses just to keep up with the sort of backlog. Right back from the Barker report of 2003, Kate Barker sort of identified that we have a massive housing shortage, and that's continued because they've not built enough houses, and there's more babies being born, and the population's still increasing. So I think that's a good market still to be in. I think with commercial, some parts of it have been great. I mean, in the last couple of years, the sheds have been good, and warehouses, and because there's lots of these businesses going online, and loads of these businesses are based in these sort of B8 storage and warehousing type units, and that's still growing. But if you look at the 10 years prior to that, there were stacks of those empty around Peterborough. Offices, loads of the offices became empty. That's why they became ripe for conversion, and we bought a few of them and converted them into apartments, into residential, and retail as well. Clearly, there are, it's become tougher. A lot of it's because of the internet. Things have moved online, so lots of retail units have become empty. That isn't to say it isn't a good market to go into. It's just at what price. Things always work, don't they? It's just at what level.
Absolutely. Another question we've had come in is, what are your top money saving tips?
So I wrote a book on this. It's called Low Cost High Life. One of my friends often says to me that I quite enjoy the champagne lifestyle on lemonade wages type lifestyle. So and that I've, because I didn't start out with a lot of money, but I always wanted to. I wanted to travel business class and first class, but I never had the money. I wanted to drive a nice car, but I never had the money. So I sort of devised a few ways to do it. So I'm very much into Avios. I've got a podcast. If you have a listen, if you just type into Google, Mark My Words, and the word Stitcher, That's the podcast. Mark my word, Stitcher, and then you type Avios. You'll get a 50-minute podcast on how to get a British Airways American Express card, get all the bonuses, refer your mum, refer your dad, refer your sister, refer your brother, get sort of bonuses all the way around for doing that. And if you're focused enough on it and you spend enough time on it, I would say within 6 months, after not spending too much, you'll be able to get 2 seats in first class for £600 a seat to the Caribbean or wherever you want to go, really. So there's definite value there. Always book 365 days ahead on that one by using Avios. I discovered sort of contract hire with cars, and Shaz, it can be great because you can offset them through your business. I found a really good website. It's called Contract Hire and Leasing. It's like a search engine for contract hire. The prices have gone up slightly now, but you'll find cars on there for, I don't know, 150 quid a month. You could get an Audi A4 at the moment for £140 a month and no depreciation, and just sort of hand it back at the end. So things like that have saved our business a lot of money over the years, and certainly improved my lifestyle.
One of your probably favourite or common questions is, what do you think will be the impact of Brexit on the property market?
Well, Brexit's created a lot of uncertainty, hasn't it? And I think that's the main issue, as with the credit crunch. The underlying economics, the underlying fundamentals haven't necessarily changed. So, GDP is slightly, the growth in GDP is lower than it would be had the Brexit vote not taken place, because of the uncertainty, but not because we're trading any less with Europe, or and not because the Europeans are buying less from us. That isn't the case. It's just because people expect us to be trading less, or expect there to be a problem. They're then spending less, and therefore the economy is not growing as much as it would have done. So at the moment, it's not as good as it could be, but it's not having a massive effect. I know there can be sort of doom and gloom in the media, and they'll sort of jump on it, but I don't think it's huge. And obviously there was another report out today saying that growth will be further reduced if we come out of the EU. I suspect that's likely. I voted to stay in. I don't really see the point of taking the risk, if I'm honest. I'm into business, and for me, I just think it's going to be much lower risk to stay in, and therefore keep the trade rolling. That said, is it going to be a disaster, and is it going to be as bad as a lot of the doomsters say, including all those Remainers who come out with these cataclysmic sort of numbers as to how things are going to fall off a cliff? Well, it hasn't happened, and I suspect it won't happen. Even if we come out and there's hard Brexit and all the rest of it, they'll devise something. There'll probably be some sort of we're talking about a transitional deal, aren't we now? There's too many vested interests on both sides, too much trade, too much money to be made for them to all throw it away on both sides. So I suspect muddle through. Will it affect the property market massively? Probably not, but if it does, that creates a good buying opportunity. The credit crunch did affect the property industry, in a big way, but it just meant there was lots of cheap properties about. So that offered a good opportunity. So always keep plenty of cash back. See times like that as a good opportunity to start going around estate agents, go and see a load of vendors, negotiate hard, buy cheaper units, rent them out for the long term. It doesn't matter if they halve in value. They're over the long term, it's always shown that they'll come back. As long as you hold them through those periods, the rent is likely to continue. You'll keep making income, and of course we know over the long term capital growth will come, and you'll make good money from it. It's just got to be seen as a long-term enterprise.
Good sound advice. Now I know our Prime Minister has been having some challenges recently over Brexit.
Just a few.
If you were in charge with your business hat on, what kind of deal would you be looking to negotiate?
Oh, well, do you know what? I think lots of people thought that David Cameron was, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't use the word coward, but maybe he should have stayed and not. Yeah. Well, the vote went against him and he resigned the next morning. In some ways, that was probably quite an intelligent thing to do, because it's a poison chalice. There's lots of people that sort of come out with all these ideas as to what they would do, but I just suspect that it's almost one of those impossible tasks, which I don't know. You hear Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's been sort of sounding off today about how hard Brexit would be the way forward. My stepfather, he'd be similar. Well, let's come out. 2 fingers to the lot of them. We're better. We used to trade with the world. Pre-Europe. We had an empire. Well, we don't have one of those anymore. We don't have all these sort of other trading partners. And in my opinion, yes, we trade with the Europeans and the Irish because predominantly they're in the EU and there are no tariffs and barriers. But actually, quite a big part of it is they're next door. Yeah. And when they're next door, that means it costs less to get your goods over the border. So I'd be going for a soft option, probably not popular with loads of people. Yes, they voted for Brexit. Yeah, all this, I think lots of people want to believe that they're going to be able to sort of stop the free movement of people, but continue with the free trade, continue with the sort of stay in the single market and have no tariffs and barriers. I suspect that wouldn't work. I don't think it will work. I suspect we saw in the last round of negotiations, they got the full 60 billion. They got pretty much everything they wanted. Our government seemed to get very little, and I just have a sneaking suspicion that's what's going to happen again, because they don't have a major reason to flex the other side. I think we're probably the weaker party. So I'd go with the business friendly option. I would continue, see the single market as the prized goal. I'd probably give way on the free movement of people. I'd probably give way on the ECJ and just continue with it. I suspect that's what's going to happen anyway. If we had another sort of vote, to come out of the EU, would it go the same way now? Well, maybe it wouldn't. Probably depends, depends what time of the year it is and what the newspapers are saying at that point. But I suspect a lot of people would change their minds now with all the issues that have happened since.
But I think a lot of people will be disappointed because a certain percentage of the Brexiteers voted because of immigration or free movement of people, because of the ECJ, or because of Brussels. So I think if we keep those two, we'll probably be worse off in terms of the deal we've got.
Well, that was it.
It makes no sense, does it?
It doesn't make any sense because this was the whole point. You sort of come out and you're still going to be subject to all these mechanisms, but you won't be able to. You don't have a say. You won't have the same ability. You're on the outside. You don't have the same ability to influence these institutions. I get what people say. They're unelected and they don't listen to people's views. But if I'm honest, just from a purely sort of selfish point of view, if I want a politician in Westminster to sort of do something or change something, it's very unlikely to happen anyway. So I'm not really sure how it's going to be any different for me or the man on the street or local businesses. They're very anti-landlord at the moment, even the Conservatives. I don't think it's going to really impact that much. I do think, however, that economic growth, education, the government having, a good amount of funds to fund the important sectors of our society, I don't know, like the NHS and all these other things that come from a strong economy, are the things that will help real people the most.
Good insights there. Thank you, Mark.
Mark, what do you do outside work? What's your hobbies and interests?
So I do quite a lot of stuff. I mean, I qualified as a helicopter pilot a few years ago. So I fly out of Connington, which is just if you go along the A1, it's next to Home, a little village just outside of Peterborough. So I fly Robinson R44 from there. I enjoy sort of going around England. I went to France over the Channel. We went for lunch at the 2K. That was good, and flew back straight out of Connington. Had the border force on the phone, the whole lot. Passports, the whole lot. So that's quite a lot of fun. I enjoy that. It's you have to concentrate quite a lot. I ski, and we're going away next month. My wife, I've just got married, so my wife. She's getting into that more, and we'll get her sort of bit more instructions. I run every day, or go to the gym, so exercise frequently. I find that helps me a lot in business. If I can get up and sort of get down the gym or go running, it really sorts my head out. I try and eat well. That, again, makes me way more productive in the office. Generally speaking, other sort of stuff which going out, eating, all that sort of stuff that people like to do.
Brilliant. What advice would you give yourself, or what mistakes did you make when you started your business that you would do differently now?
Yeah, there's loads of stuff. I mean, I'd had a few businesses before this business, I'd probably got the wrong partners, and they weren't successful. And for me, I'd gone into business with friends who were probably a little bit more like me, who didn't have different skills. So they were, we were following each other around all day and sort of doing the same sort of stuff. And that created, quite a few issues and didn't add value. And those businesses weren't successful. I also picked partners that I felt, I think over a period of time, I couldn't trust. So I couldn't be sure they were working on the business, or I couldn't be sure that my money was safe with them, or that they would necessarily have the same interests, and that they were aligned. That's very important. You must have the same objectives and interests that are aligned. So that was really, really important. So I think picking business partners through businesses, and picking the wrong ones were some of the biggest mistakes that I've made over a number of years. And then when I found my current partner, Rob, and we've been together 11 years, that has got to be the biggest thing that's made the change for me and allowed us to go on. I think we must have sourced, refurbed, and developed over 600-700 properties. I mean, we've got a lot of partners. We manage them all in Peterborough. I think we manage 750 properties from Progressive Lets in Hampton, that's I've got another partner who runs that, who's great. So having great people around you is very, very important.
Also, how important is having passion for what you're doing? How important that's for you to be successful?
You've got to love what you do. You've got to go into work every day and be doing the stuff that you want to do. When I came out of university, I went on a graduate training scheme. So it was in a big fresh meat business, and they're like the biggest sort of beef group and red meat group in Europe, and they supplied sort of Asda and Sainsbury's and all those kind of people. And I went round, I got some really good experience because I went round sort of sales, marketing, production, all those different areas and different factories all around the country. But the reality was I didn't love doing it. I didn't love going in a meat factory. I didn't love working in the transport department for that business. And, it really showed through, and I was a lot less successful. What I really loved doing was finding a property, sort of leveraging it, getting an infinite return on investment, because of course once you've put your deposit in, refurbed it, and then got most of your deposit back, if you get it all back, it's an infinite return. So that sort of return on capital invested, and then multiplying that and compounding it over a period of time, that gets me very, very excited. So if I can sort of be doing projects or be creating investments that do that, then that's my passion, and therefore, I'm usually a lot more successful at it. There are so many people doing things every day that they don't love, they don't sort of really want to do, so that you've got to get into something that you really, really want to do, and then build your business around that if you're going to go into business, I think.
Last question for you, Mark. If somebody's interested in finding out more about the property sector or your training courses, so that they can learn more about how property works, what do they need to do?
So go on progressiveproperty.co.uk, or you can give us a ring. We're in Hampton. Telephone number 01733 898 550. So that's progressiveproperty.co.uk, 01733 898 550. If you've got a property to let, we have a letting agency, so that's Progressive Lets. Again, that's in Hampton. We manage properties all over Peterborough, Wellingborough and Corby. Give us a ring on that number.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure interviewing you.
You're number one for local, national and international news across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough on 106.2 FM.